good afternoon. My name is Uche Akabandu, Senior Director of Nutrition Strategy here at Meals on Wheels America. Welcome to today's webinar titled Reaching Older Adults Who May Not Know Their Risk of Malnutrition. The purpose of today's webinar is to share a new online training opportunity for Stepping Up Your Nutrition, a program by the Maryland Living Well Center of Excellence that will cover how nutrition status and muscle strength are linked to falls risk and how exercise, fluids, protein help maintain strong muscles. In addition, you will learn where to find local resources for food and nutrition services. On behalf of the Learning at Meals on Wheels America team, we are thrilled to have you join us today, and it is our pleasure to be joined by two wonderful speakers, both leaders in their respective fields. I'll introduce them to you. First is Sue Lackenmeyer. She's a state program coordinator at the Living Well Center of Excellence here in Maryland, or MAC. In this role, she assists in scaling and sustaining evidence-based programs and building local and regional partnerships. She is a Stanford-certified master trainer for the chronic disease, chronic pain, diabetes, and cancer thriving and surviving self-management programs. She's also a master trainer for Stepping On, an evidence-based falls prevention program. Adding to these illustrious titles, she's also the co-creator of Stepping Up Your Nutrition. She has been an advocate for older adults for many years to ensure their access to critical prevention and health services. Next, we're joined by Matthew Smith. Dr. Smith is the co-director of the Texas A&M Center for Population Health and Aging. He holds faculty positions at the Texas A&M School of Public Health and the University of Georgia College of Public Health. Recognizing the health status is influenced by vast and interconnected sets of determinants, Dr. Smith has devoted his career to create synergistic partnerships and initiatives to encourage positive lifestyles and reduce the rates of preventable morbidity and mortality. Dr. Smith's involvement in local, state, and national evaluation initiatives affords him opportunities to apply his broad research area and evaluation experience to bridge research and practice issues in the healthcare sector and in the aging services and public health networks. Next, a few housekeeping remarks. Please note, those participating in today's webinar, that your lines are muted throughout the duration. However, our time today will be highly interactive, based on a number of polls and discussion questions for you to participate in today's presentation. As such, we encourage you to send us your poll answers, type in discussion questions, comments through the Q&A function on your screen. We'll send around a follow-up email later today or tomorrow with links to the webinar, but for now, I'd like to pass things over to Matthew and Sue. Take it away, you guys.
Thank you so much. We are so excited to be with you. We want to learn from you as well. And we thought we'd start by finding out a little bit more about you. You just heard about Matthew and I. What is your role with Meals on Wheels, and what city and state are you in? If you can share some of those responses in the chat box, that will help us better understand who you all and where we can go with this webinar.
Thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing your comments, and we see them coming in. A Meals on Wheels site coordinator is from St. Paul, Minnesota. The Chief Operations Officer from Granville, Michigan, welcome. A nutrition coordinator from Wisconsin, welcome. We have an intern joining us today from Western Illinois, Area Agency on Agency, welcome. We have all kinds of directors, nutrition program coordinators, as well joining us today from individual programs as well as area agencies on aging. We appreciate you joining us too. Meals on Wheels coordinators from Brooklyn, a dietitian from Minneapolis, hello and welcome. We have case managers as well as those who direct senior volunteer programs from the great state of South Carolina all the way to Florida. We have Congregate Meals site manager and an executive director joining us today, as well as an aging program administrator from Georgia. Thank you all.
That is absolutely terrific. So as you can see, we're going to keep you a little bit busy on this webinar as well. we would like to hear from you what your primary reasons for joining today are, whether it's to learn more about malnutrition in older adults or how to identify and reduce that risk for them, whether it's the fact that you're looking for programs and resources, or interested in increasing older adults' awareness of malnutrition risk, as well as empowering older adults to reduce their risk. That's really why we are on the call today, to really provide some answers to these. So I know that the Meals on Wheels team is going to be looking at your responses to this. Matthew, you don't get to vote, it says.
That's right, but I would click a lot of these boxes if I could.
So Sammy or Uche, do you want to just quickly share the results with everybody?
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for participating. It seems that the majority of folks joining the call today are here because they're interested in empowering older adults to take steps to reduce their malnutrition risk and to learn more about malnutrition as well. These came in at about 3/4 of the proportion of responses today. 60% are interested in helping older adults identify and reduce the risk of malnutrition themselves. They want to learn the answers to that. We also have folks who are interested in increasing older adults' awareness of malnutrition risk. So thank you to everyone who participated today.
That's great. Thank you. So this really is our Maryland Living Well Center of Excellence and some of the many programs that we deliver across the state of Maryland. We really work statewide on evidence-based programs.
Hi, Sue. We are having some audio challenges, I think, and we're not able to hear you. To connect, can you try speaking again to see if we can connect with you?
Oh, sure. I'm on the call. You don't hear me now?
We do hear you now, loud and clear. Thank you so much.
Okay, good, good. So I was just saying that this first slide really describes the licensed programs that the Maryland Living Well Center of Excellence provides across the state of Maryland. We do training, technical assistance, and then the data collection and reporting on these programs. We can go to the next slide. So the Stepping Up Your Nutrition is really a community-based program. It was a joint collaboration between the Living Well Center, our Maryland Department of Aging, and Abbott Nutrition to develop the curriculum. So we had health educators, we had registered dietitians in particular who were working on the curriculum for this, and you can see that we were winners of 2 different Innovations Awards from the International Council on Active Aging and from the National Area Agencies on Association of Area Agencies on Aging. And then our Maryland Department of Aging received Aging Community Living grant, nutrition grant, to really foster the development of the programs in Maryland. And that's really where we began to work with Matthew Smith to help us really look at and evaluate this evidence-based, or this evidence-informed session 0, we call it. So we're looking to, again, identify malnutrition and food insecurity risk and develop an action plan for folks around how they can be healthier in their nutrition and the work that they do in their own homes. And then we really did a pre-post measure of knowledge and behavior change and hand grip strength as well, which is an optional. So the reason we are so concerned, obviously, about malnutrition is we know that nutritional status is a key predictor of frailty, and we know how important nutritional status is to prevent that frailty. We also, because we deliver evidence-based falls programs know that people who are falling are often malnourished. We really don't have any direct information on the importance of nutrition in most of our falls programs, so we really wanted to make sure that we could start to take care of that. And also, we know that, again, once there is a fall connected with being malnourished, that's really a huge decline in terms of health-related quality of life. Matthew, other thoughts?
Well, I really think that when thinking about malnutrition for older adults, there's a lot of considerations and I think a lot of misconceptions. I think that oftentimes people think of folks who are only frail and folks who are, undernourished are the ones that are malnourished. Now, that's part of it, but malnourishment and having that malnutrition is actually much more than that. And I think that our ability to be able to identify those older adults quickly and accurately, to be able to link them to services, link them to programs, is really important and essential. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But when we talk about the risk and who's at risk, I think that segues perfectly to the next slide.
So this is for all of you. Let us know who among these folks is at risk for malnutrition. Someone who's lost weight without trying, someone who's overweight, an older adult who's recently been in the hospital, or someone who mostly eats alone.
Thank you all for participating in the poll. We see about 40% of you have answered, and so we welcome hearing from the majority of you before we close the poll and let you know what you said. Okay, wonderful. We have the polling results. And it looks like based on the attendees today, about half felt that those who are at risk for malnutrition are older adults who had lost weight without trying. Almost 40% said it was older adults who mostly eat alone. And then we had lower percentages who indicated it was older adults who were recently discharged from a hospital or who were overweight.
So if you think about it, Matthew really sort of indicated that it is being overweight really can be part of this. It's really, the malnourishment is quite different. Actually, all of those were correct answers. But here you can see why this is so important to us. And I know the work that you're doing is really critical here. We do know from the research that nationally, 1 in 2 older adults is at risk of malnutrition. The increase in cost is about triple for those who have poor nutritional status. And again, we know that folks who are malnourished spend more days in the hospital. The cost to the healthcare system, over $51 billion, absolutely directly associated with malnutrition. And we know that 60% of older adults who are in the hospital are absolutely malnourished. Matthew, anything else you want to add here?
Only that, naturally for older adults who enter into the hospital or healthcare system, there's usually a reason that happens. And unfortunately, that malnourishment that's occurring oftentimes contributes to those other conditions that will land them in the emergency room or land them in the hospital. And unfortunately, once getting treatment, depending on what happens and where they're discharged, that malnourishment can then be forwarded on over time. So what we really like to focus on are those care transitions coming into the hospital, but also keeping people out of the hospital, making sure that we give them that proper nutrition, proper awareness, proper education, but also when they come home or wherever they go, to make sure that they are welcomed by a network like Meals on Wheels, like their other social supports, to really give them that opportunity to get back on their feet, because nourishment fosters health and prevents further ailments.
Absolutely. Next slide. All right. So which of these can cause malnutrition in older adults? Living alone, medication side effects, depression, chronic conditions, changing taste buds. Let us know what you think.
Wonderful. We have the poll open and so many folks answering to this. Which of these can cause malnutrition in older adults? Let's see. Nice. Great result. It seems that so many of you indicated that living alone and chronic conditions are chief contributors to malnutrition, followed closely by depression, then medication side effects, and changing taste buds.
Sure, and we don't often think about the changes to our taste and smell as we get older, but certainly that is another big contributing factor to our lack of interest in eating, or not eating as well as we get older. So the Stepping Up Your Nutrition workshop that we're sharing with you, some of these polls that you've taken are really based on some of the information that is in our training. But the goal really was to better understand the importance of balanced nutrition for prevention of falls and how to identify key warning signs of poor nutrition, particularly for community-dwelling older adults. So I indicated that we had health educators, we had, registered dietitians developing the curriculum, and many of you may be registered dietitians, and you know that the whole concept of nutrition is very complex. There are many things that we really are every day to ensure that we are healthy and well nourished. However, because this is a community, was initially designed as a community-based group program, we needed a truly simple message. So we ended up agreeing that fluids and protein throughout the day was really the biggest contributor that we could get people to understand about how it affected their nutrition and how they could really prevent being malnourished. Again, absolutely that messaging that falls risk increases if you're poorly nourished. The importance of exercise along with protein are really key factors around that building strong muscles. And then empowering older adults to be able to take action, to be able to collaborate, talk to their healthcare provider, and talk to their community-based area agencies on aging, others to really reduce that falls risk. And then really importantly, we knew that we needed to make sure that everyone who took advantage of the workshop had local resources for food and nutrition services.
And I would say what I love so much about the program in its design is that, as Sue said, it really is simple messaging. People have very complex relationships with food and a lot of different barriers with getting the proper nourishment. So having very clear, simple messaging that we know influences muscular health is extremely important, and it's also actionable. Things we can do, things we can embed into the daily lives of older adults more directly.
That's great. So the Stepping Up Your Nutrition, if it's offered as a group program, is about 2.5 hours. It's quite similar in structure to the Stanford self-management programs or any of the evidence-based falls programs, Matter of Balance, Stepping On. So it's a familiar concept in terms of the workshop, but it can be offered as a standalone group program. It can be offered to a group, maybe they don't have 2.5 hours together, so it could be split up and offered over several different shorter sessions. It can absolutely, we encourage pairing it with an evidence-based program, especially a falls program, and it can also be offered one-on-one over several brief sessions. So again, it might be a real opportunity for folks who are doing meal delivery could consider doing a bit of the program at each visit, something like that. So again, very versatile. Most of the evidence-based programs are pretty strict in the way that they're offered, but this program can certainly be offered in small chunks, all at once, or again, as a group program or one-on-one.
And as I've learned more about the program, what I truly think is most beneficial is that the training to become a leader for stepping up your nutrition is really building to that toolbox, to that skill set that can really be used and integrated into every interaction with an older adult. And so that's really why that one-on-one or group format is so useful.
Absolutely. So Leanne Eagle, who is our executive director, is really the one that came up with this understanding the importance of measuring that risk assessment using a validated risk assessment tool, and then the messaging that goes along with that, that the older adult has. So everyone recognizes a stoplight. It doesn't matter if you're a clinician, if you are a registered dietitian, a Meals on Wheels, person who's delivering the meals, if you're a person receiving them, if you're a community member, all of us understand red, yellow, green. And this is really the way that we do the messaging to help older adults, once they've done the risk assessment, better understand what their next steps are. So if someone is at high risk, we want them consulting their healthcare team, and certainly making sure that they get the help and the resources they need to change their nutritional status. In terms of somebody who's in the yellow, they have a moderate risk score, and they really do need to take action to make sure that they continue to improve and maintain their nutritional health. So again, recommended that they talk to their healthcare team and identify resources. And then folks who are in the green, great, continue doing what you're doing, healthy eating habits to keep them healthy and strong. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to whet your appetite just a little bit. Show you, this is an online training that we're talking about. We just transitioned to an online training a couple of months ago. And this is actually just a little short video that you would see at the beginning of the training. Take it away,
thank you.
Sammy.
Thank you so much. So today, dear audience, this is our first time offering a video in this way. So surprise, it's a bit of an experiment today. So we're going to click on the video link. You will see a screen pop up and the video should play. So Sammy, I'll have you get started.
Why is identifying malnutrition risk in older adults important? National data indicates that 1 in 2 older adults may be at risk of malnutrition. Annual costs for disease-associated malnutrition are estimated at $51.3 billion. Although prevalent, malnutrition often goes unrecognized. This 30 to 45-minute online training will provide you with the skills and resources to educate and motivate community-dwelling older adults to prevent or lower their risk of malnutrition. It will also equip you to identify and refer at-risk older adults to community-based resources to reduce their malnutrition risk. Stepping Up Your Nutrition, or SUYN, is a 2.5-hour interactive workshop that focuses on how nutrition affects falls risk, the importance of muscles for strength, key nutrients for older adults, particularly protein and fluid, how to determine personal nutrition risk and hand grip strength, and how to create an action plan to improve nutritional health. SUYN can be delivered in group settings or a one-on-one format. After completing the online training and knowledge test, you will receive facilitator tips about effective workshop delivery, complete curriculum for stepping up your nutrition, optional questionnaires that can be used to identify nutrition risk, suggested resources to provide to individuals with identified risk, and participant handouts for the community workshop. With this brief training, you can help combat malnutrition in your community. This is achievable by educating and engaging older adults. Together, we can empower them to reduce their nutritional risk and link them to needed services and resources. For more information, visit our website at www.steppingupyournutrition.com.
That's great. It worked. Hooray. Terrific. Terrific. All right. So I hope that gives you just a little bit of a taste of this. This is actually one of the quizzes that you'll see in the training, and we want you to take it now. At what age do our bodies have the highest amount of muscle? What do you think? 15 to 24, 25 to 40, 41 to 55.
Thanks, you guys, for thinking about what the answer could be and submitting your polling questions. I think we're soon to close the poll, so get your answers in there, and then we'll see what the right answer is. Voila,
Smart.
you have it. Sue, do you want to unpack the answers for us here? We see that 45% said between the ages of 15 to 24, and the other half of the audience said between 25 and 40.
Absolutely. So those in the green are right. It is that 25 to 40 age group, and certainly our muscles, our bones, everything are still growing in that 15 to 24. So they're certainly strong, but stronger amount of muscle in that mid-range. And then, unfortunately, as we begin to age after 40, we are actually losing percentage of muscle mass by the day, by the week. So think about that wonderful opportunity to be living between 25 and 40, and your opportunity to really make sure that you're getting great nutrition, and then those habits can help you really maintain some of that muscle strength as you age. Matthew? Did I lose Matthew?
No, I'm still here. I'm so sorry. And so
you're just thinking about which age you are here for that, right?
That's right. I'm transitioning between these ages, but I do really think that it is an important concept to really understand that our older population is having, lower muscle rates than at their younger years. And as Sue says, those habitual behaviors, what can we do to really help individuals think through their health, their nutrition, and make good habit-forming decisions to help them as they lose that muscle getting older?
Yeah. So again, this is part of the concept within the curriculum, helping folks understand why protein is so tremendously important. Particularly as we age, and if we have illness or in the hospital, again, those of you who identified chronic conditions as being a risk, absolutely right. So we really do talk to folks about what protein does. It helps preserve muscle. It helps us feel full, helps us fight infections, heal injuries, all of these things and more. And so we do a number of brainstormings in the workshop with older adults to help them think about where they can get protein. In fact, one of the things that we do in the group setting is to do a protein tasting, utilizing a lot of the beans and other products, yogurts, other things that folks might not be used to having. It doesn't just have to be meat, right? It doesn't just have to be dairy. So really encouraging folks to look at other sources of protein, and many of those are low cost as well.
I really like that fact, and I love that the program introduces these different concepts of what is what protein is contained within, what other forms. So many times people just think about the meat, the dairy. There are so many other options, and especially depending on where the older adult lives, many of these other alternatives are more shelf stable, and therefore there's great opportunities to kind of expand their horizons, expand their minds about how they can get protein beyond just the traditional meat and dairy.
Next slide. Oh, all right. So here's a little test to see how well you know what foods have the most protein. So breakfast, scrambled egg, apple slices, Greek yogurt, or snacks and snacks. I think you can answer both of these questions. So grapes, peanut butter, or low-fat pudding. So give us your answers.
All right, you see some of them coming in for breakfast. There's some conversation between the scrambled egg and the Greek yogurt as well. Folks are catching on, and there is a consensus growing that for the snack, peanut butter seems to be the winner for the protein race at snack time. We've seen more and more people coming in with the scrambled egg, and the Greek yogurt seems to be neck and neck.
Well, they're not neck and neck. If it's really Greek yogurt, it has a higher gram count on protein. Scrambled eggs are good, nothing wrong with them, but it really is Greek yogurt that tends to be one of the highest concentrations. And certainly you are all right, those of you who are picking peanut butter, that even though it's just 2 tablespoons, way more protein than the pudding, and of course the grapes, unfortunately, and the apple slices don't have much protein at all, if any. All right. Well, this is a very educated group here.
That's what I was thinking, a very educated group. And I think, one of the things to consider is that these foods, the Greek yogurt, the scrambled eggs, they're both great. But if you're really thinking about an older adult, their appetite level, their ease in which they can chew and eat, getting the most protein bang for the buck for the ounce is really important, and something else that you can learn.
Right. So again, fluids, we tend to forget what a critical role these play. And so again, our opportunity here is to help older adults remember that fluids are so critical to helping us digest the food, absorb all of those nutrients, really helps us get rid of waste, lubricates our joints, protects our organs, helps regulate our body temperature. And in fact, as we get older, our sense, we talked earlier a little bit about sense of taste and sense of smell, and that sense, that understanding that you're thirsty really is lessened as well. So it's so important for older adults to really have those fluids and to prevent dehydration. Again, another false risk there. So we really do want folks to recognize that they want and need to drink fluids with each meal and every snack. And in terms of the recommendations that we share, again, if somebody has a well-balanced diet that has not only a lot of protein, but does have those fruits and vegetables, probably 4 to 5 cups or 32 to 40 ounces a day is okay. But if they're not having a lot of fruits and vegetables, then they really need to up those fluids. All right, so I think we have a brainstorm coming up. Next slide. All right, so share with us, what are some ways you could drink more fluids? All right, put those in the chat box for us.
That's great. Such a good question that I know is on the minds of so many of us. Everyone's got a water bottle these days, but what other creative ways are there out there to drink more fluids? We have some great suggestions coming in through the chat box. One attendee says, set an alarm each hour to drink a few ounces. That's wonderful. A nice alarm on your phone to recur all day. Seems like a great idea. Be sure to add flavorings such as lemons or berries to to your water bottle. Have that water bottle at all times. Other suggestions are to drink your vegetables and fruits, for instance, through smoothies, or eat fruits like watermelon. That's all really good suggestions. Keep that water bottle handy at the office, at your desk, or while you're out running errands. These are all really good suggestions as well. Some of the water bottles are really cool these days. You have little infusers where you can put in nice, yummy fruits like berries and citrus fruits, so that you can provide that extra flavoring to your water. Of course, another suggestion, don't forget that there's lots of yummy things that contain fluids like soup, tea, and coffee. These are also counted towards one's fluid intake. So these are the suggestions that I can use.
Absolutely. You are right on target with those. Matthew, anything else you can think of you want to add?
Excellent creativity, and I love it. And one of the things that I always say, depending on how you feel, is every time I pass by a water fountain, I try to at least get a couple gulps down.
Good idea. All right. Next slide. So when you go to the website, the resources and tools that are included are, again, that documented risk assessment for falls nutrition and malnutrition and food insecurity, letters that are referral to provider services for at-risk individuals so that they can take something to their healthcare provider. And then we certainly encourage referral to food banks, other community resources for food insecurity. And then these days, certainly that screening for social determinants, social isolation are always really helpful as well and important. We talked before about somebody who was living alone or eating alone. And then referral, again, to the appropriate evidence-based programs to really help keep those older adults in good shape. So as I said, that risk and action plan can be shared with the provider. And then thanks to Matthew, there are some pre-post knowledge and behavior change assessments that can be used. Absolutely. And I think, Matthew, the next slide is going to take us into some of the evaluation.
Well, excellent. And we definitely don't want to labor so much of the evaluation, but naturally I have to highlight the positives of what we've been seeing and really just highlight just a little bit about what it is that's happening to date. As of now, over 500 people have participated in the Stepping Up Your Nutrition workshop, and there is a large infrastructure for training, and that training is growing and growing and growing, with over 60 trained leaders offering workshops in over 22 cities. This is just a growing initiative. When we think about those Stepping Up Your Nutrition participants, on average about 75 years old, with over a third being 80 years and older. So very appropriate for our oldest aging populations. About 80% are female, which is pretty representative of all the other evidence-based programs that are offered nationally. And we see some diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, in terms of about 50% or so being non-Hispanic white, another 25 or quarter being African American or Black, and about 70% of the participants reported living alone. To the next slide. When we think about the risk upon entry of SUYN, this is where the screening is so important. We start off with a screening, and what we've seen, as you remember the stoplight that Sue was talking about earlier, with an average score of 44 on that assessment, over 70% were at high nutrition risk. That means 90% of the people had some form of nutrition risk. With that said, if these individuals weren't engaged in some other type of program, if they weren't coming to a fall prevention program, if they weren't engaged through the local area agencies on aging and MAC, they maybe would have gone unnoticed, unrecognized. So we see that, generally speaking, this workshop is reaching those individuals who can really use the knowledge and behavior. In terms of fall risk, we see that 1 in 5 reported a recent fall, and half of those had an injury. and that about 15% remained fearful of falling a lot, and many more still having that fear of falling. And when we think about some of those behaviors that Sue had mentioned before, we see that about 20% never or rarely ate with other people, and that another 20% sometimes or often ran out of food, and over half were skipping meals. Now,
Absolutely.
one of the things I want to highlight is this graphic image, because we just talked about strategic ways to be able to get our fluids. We also know that there is protein in Brussels sprouts, but I will just tell you that this beautiful dish that came out of my kitchen, my dear friend Sue has been giving me grief over.
I sure do. Well, I do because, Matthew, our message, although vegetables and fruits are so important, our message really has been fluids and protein. And Matthew did a huge, gorgeous poster at the Gerontological Society. And this was at right center stage, right, with this beautiful picture of these vegetables. So people would come up and I said, what do you think the message of this program is? And they would say, oh, eat more fruits and vegetables. So that's why I give him such a hard time. He will put it into every single presentation that we do.
And I can't resist because I think it's a constant taunting. But remember, as we were talking about earlier, with all of those different sources of protein, even though some are higher, some are lower, and that we know foods contain hydration, the key is to keep on pursuing more protein, regular drinking throughout the day.
That's right. All right. So I think we're coming really toward the end of what we want to tell you about and share. And I know we're going to have some time for questions in just a little bit. But just to let you know, this is the website for Stepping Up Your Nutrition. It really is an interactive skill building approach. It takes you about 30 minutes to go through the training, and with that, you would be able to provide it as a group workshop in 2.5 hours, as a standalone, or as a recruitment session for evidence-based programs. And it really is, you'll get all of the downloadable curriculum and the facilitator resources, all of the participant handouts and the surveys, the sample letters. There is a link to a hand grip strength training and certification. There's no charge for that. And so it can easily be accessed. And then as you take the training, there's 6 months of access really to the website, so that as we post additional materials about malnutrition, those would be accessible. Matthew?
Yes, absolutely. And so I think that's really the greatest part, is that the 30 minutes equips you to be able to use this in a variety of different ways. To get that training, you can either do the face-to-face in a group format, individual format, or just use these skills in your daily interactions with any other older adult that you serve or work with. With that said, as Sue was saying, the downloadable course pack, everything that you would get when you're done, would make you self-sufficient and be able to use all of these resources and come back to them. I also want to reiterate, unlike a lot of these other evidence-based programs, the training is one time, and that is it. So it's a one-time experience to become trained and be certified. On the next slide is just very simply how best to navigate through. As you see, and Sue indicated the website at the top, steppingupyournutrition.com. If you go to the site and you can go ahead and focus, I just kind of put some red circles. There are different tabs where you can go ahead and try to click purchase and go and check out like any other online shopping. You have your cart and you move on through. We were able to secure a promotion code to get 25% off. We are so happy to be able to do this for everybody. And tell your friends. I mean, there's no problem with this. The code, it will ask you for a promotional code, and that is the MOW_discount. And that is the code that you would use and go and learn and pass this along. We were really just so happy, and I was so happy to be brought into this, to be able to evaluate the program and know that because it is so wonderful, because it's helping people, and it's really becoming so effective, to say we can reach more and more people if we take it out of the face-to-face and try to have online training to reach critical mass, more people, more use.
So the cost of the training normally is $19.99, but with your discount, it's $14.99 for 30 minutes of your time and the opportunity to really make a difference in older adults' lives. So I think that's it for our slides, right? I think the last slide is
Yes.
question, thoughts from all of you. Let's just double check. Yes, yeah. So we'd love to hear what you think. If you have any questions or any responses to today's webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you both, Sue and Matthew, for your great presentations, for the interactive conversation we had today between the polls, the discussion questionnaires. I think that we've had a great chance to learn and communicate with you through today's webinar platform. So we invite all those on the line to please share your questions with our lovely speakers today through the question chat function. We will be keeping an eye out as those questions pour in. For now, I think we just want to also reiterate how wonderful it is that you're able to offer discounted access to this training to members of our network. It's really exciting that they can have a crack at this wonderful training and, again, spend 30 minutes of their time and get so much benefit that they can translate on to the seniors that they serve. So onward with the questions. Okay, our first question is how do you reach and communicate with older adults that are not motivated to change or attend a seminar?
That's a great question. You know, we get a lot of referrals to our programs, evidence-based programs, from providers. We're very fortunate that we have a close relationship. But just because a provider says you should go do this, sometimes is an inspiration, but not always. And so we do use some motivational interviewing, asking an older adult about what's important to them, what it is they want to accomplish, what it is that would be a goal for them is one of the ways that you do that. And again, this particular workshop is really interactive and is asking folks to share their thoughts and ideas about how to solve some of those problems. So while it's easy to say, eat more protein, drink more fluids, the way that the curriculum is set up is really to elicit those kinds of things from that individual or from that group. And certainly in a group setting, you'll get a lot of that sharing. But if it's an individual, it's really asking them, you know, what they think, what's important to them in terms of how they're eating and what they're eating. So listening to them first makes a big difference. Matthew?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Your last statement really said it. It's really understanding who you're working with and understanding why it is that they are or are not wanting to engage in these different behaviors, and really just learning more about them, having them come to their own solutions, and then helping them to really execute those.
Wonderful, thank you. We have another question from the audience, a question about caffeinated fluids. So do caffeinated fluids count towards the total fluid intake? Is there something
Absolutely.
that you know about caffeinated fluids?
That's a great question, and we actually cover it in the curriculum, and the answer is yes. So tea, coffee, sodas are caffeinated, many of them, but they're still fluids. So yes, we know there's caffeine in them, but certainly those can be included. The one thing that we really do say is that alcoholic beverages don't really count as increasing your fluid intake for the nutritional purposes.
And I think for malnourishment, any liquid is actually a positive, but much like the activities we did in this webinar today, there are better fluids that are more effective than others. So while you would never say no to a fluid, we certainly do want to encourage the water and some of those maybe non-caffeinated as well. But all liquids are good.
Yeah.
Great. We had another question that came in about folks for whom fluid is their preferred choice mode of consuming calories. Is there anything that you might want to comment there for seniors who may drink more of their calories consumed as fluids and less as foods? Is there some words to say there?
Sure. So, that could be for a number of reasons. It may have to do with medications they're taking. It may have to do with their inability to chew as well any longer. Fluids, certainly, that contain protein, and there are so many high fluid protein drinks around. We all know that fresh, natural food is best, but sometimes that is not a choice. It's just not available. So certainly utilizing any of the high protein drinks, particularly, remember Matthew gave us that one slide of the research that indicated that over half of the people occasionally skipped a meal. Replacing that meal with a fluid protein drink would be perfectly acceptable. And while we would prefer people not just stick to fluids, there are reasons that people may need to do that, and so really concentrating on those high protein fluids would be just fine. Matthew, other thoughts there?
No, I agree. A mix would be preferred, but I also think that, as you're saying, that some of those drinks are more shelf stable and therefore also very easy as a meal replacement, meal supplement, just something that, again, is on hand and readily available, doesn't cause preparation or doesn't require preparation. But again, that mix, having food is also very important as well. So a mix.
Mm-hmm. We just did an initiative here in Maryland in partnership with several of our hospitals to deliver shelf-stable meals upon hospital discharge for folks. And depending on what their level of acuity was, we had a number of those that did include those protein drinks. In fact, we're still doing that with one of our hospital partners. And so that person is going home. And again, I think that preparation piece, Matthew, is another really big consideration. Folks who don't have the time, the energy, or perhaps even the agility to be able to prepare a meal, that high protein fluid drink would be really an okay alternative.
Or even depending where they live, they might not have the equipment to prepare much.
Yep, you're right.
Another question we have is if there's anything in the curriculum that would benefit registered dietitians. And one last question is really around the question of muscle and its decline as we get older. Trying to address that, is there any hope question that folks may have. So the first question is about registered dietitians and what's in the curriculum, and then just the muscle hope question.
Yeah. So, in terms of, I think the curriculum, because it was really designed in collaboration with three wonderful registered dietitians, and certainly that link to the hand grip strength training, which was really developed for registered dietitians, is in there. So yes, I think that. And now remind me again about the second part of the question.
Just about muscle and those who are wondering how to communicate the declines and yet the hope and opportunity.
That's why I forgot. So I'm 75, and I have to tell you, bending over forward is not a pretty sight. I'm really aware of the muscle loss. And so, yes, sure, there are things you can do. You're not going to be able to regain much, but you can maintain. And that certainly is an important piece. And so physical activity is absolutely that third big bucket. So it's fluids, protein, and physical activity to keep our muscles strong or stronger. But the reality really is that we are losing, after the age of 50 or so, we are losing, I have to double check, but I think it's like 2 to 3% of our muscle mass a year. So it's just part of aging, unfortunately. Not to say there have not been some great examples. Jack LaLanne, some of your audience may be way too young to remember him, but he was doing, big scrims and everything else. So certainly, and there are any number of older adults who compete nationally in a number of races, that kind of thing. So those are all good information for people who really want to make sure that they stay strong.
And if I may, for the comment about the registered dietitian, also the curriculum that can be downloaded in those materials about how best to, have the letters and communicate with providers, and also some of the screening tools, like Sue said, the hand grip strength, but also just the basic assessment, always a benefit for registered dietitians. And then much like Sue was saying also, there is hope. You can slow the progression of muscle loss, but really what's great about this program and also a lot of the initiative that we've been doing, it can be linked to other evidence-based programs, and those fall prevention programs help an older adult to strengthen their lower limbs, focus on the strength, the balance, the flexibility. So this can also be kind of a gateway or something linked to another one of those types of programs offered in the area.
All right, we have one last. Is higher intake of protein among older adults associated at all with kidney failure?
I'm not a clinician, and there may certainly be people who should be limiting their protein intake. That really would be a question to talk about with their healthcare provider.
I agree. I'm not a clinician, and I do not feel comfortable answering that question definitively.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I can't believe it that we are now at 4:30 almost and have to close out the webinar for today, but we've had a wonderful conversation, great interaction, good questions, lovely opportunities to learn. So I want to take the moment to thank our wonderful presenters today for their time and for sharing their expertise with us. Thank you all so much. Please take out a moment to those who are participating in today's webinar to fill out the survey that will appear after the webinar has ended. We value your feedback and use your suggestions to develop content for future training. With that, I bid you all a wonderful afternoon and a great rest of your day. See you on a future webinar.
Thank you.